Welcome everybody to, I think, the first in-person CPUN board meeting since May. So just we need to do a quick forum check because we have a couple of items to vote on. I'll be using our slide deck here, but it's also in what I emailed folks. But so for right now, so we have Brad, Courtney, Tom 3, Trisha 4, Amanda 5, 6, Sandra 7, Carol 8, and I'm 9. So actually we have a quorum, and then we have 3, I believe, online. Mark, Jamie, and Mandel. So we have enough to be able to continue to vote tonight. So just the first. It's now 7:35. We've got 25 minutes to get through this, so we'll do it just kind of quick and fast. Committee updates. I'll just go with diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have our meeting next Tuesday. Is the 4th Tuesday of the month at 6:30. I'll share out the Zoom link. The main project we're working on right now is the Indigenous cultural celebration and educational event that is going to happen on November 4th, and we'll be talking about that later on. But if anybody is interested actually in helping out with that event and planning that, coming to our meeting next Tuesday will be a great way to kind of jump in and get involved. So let's move on to education. Congratulations on tonight. I guess, is there anything else after the forum?
You have it there.
Anyway, thank you, Amanda and Carol.
We're still working with the with Brian's
with
the foundation and
great
volunteers in the schools and that sort of thing. So yes, that's definitely on.
Okay. Do you need any help with data entry on getting the questions to the candidates following this?
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Okay.
If you surely, you're welcome to type them up, and then we have some of the questions that were submitted online that haven't been
right. We've had to consolidate the questions that came in online.
Okay.
So
I don't know about data entry. I mean, we can just type these up and then
if you want to
list everything. Yeah, no worries.
Okay. So all right. Well, you guys have earned some rest. Health and safety. I don't know if there's anybody.
No updates.
Okay, yeah. Like, are you? I guess
we
like
have not met.
Yeah, I guess like, is there a plan to meet?
Yeah, Jeff and I need to get together and find a time to meet and figure out how to get the committee back on its feet.
Okay, it's all volunteer, so no worries. Safe streets.
Yeah, so in August in the meeting, we did a ride to go explore the new-ish Central Park Boulevard bike lanes, protected bike lanes, and then ended at the light rail stop, where we actually saw where there's some new, they mentioned this in our last meeting last month, some new storage lockers for bikes that are free to use. So if you don't want to take your bike with you on the light rail, you can use. So then we biked over to the farmers market, so it was really lovely. Our next meeting is October 3rd. Topic is still TBD. My hope is to get, I think we have a new Dottie area sort of traffic engineer representatives who want to hopefully get them to establish a relationship and talk through some topics.
Great. It's budget. It was the Dottie presentation on budget today, and I think pedestrian safety and everyone have not been funded or it's looking like they're not being funded. So I guess if any folks want to mobilize around like multimodal pedestrian, bike, and traffic safety, it needs a push.
One other thing I'll mention, I've got an update on what is actually happening. I saw some blue workings that look like they're going to make the bike lane in Syracuse on the south end, close to Primrose, I think is that school over there. And it looks like they're going to do some protected use of the intersections infrastructure, which actually looks pretty cool. So if it happens, it's great.
Okay. I would just say if you're meeting on October 3rd, like that's when it's the timing is right to kind of talk to people about that. So sustainability, Mark,
yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, good. Do I sound like the voice of God or something like that coming in from the speakers or what? Okay. So we have our October 7th harvest event, our first one ever. So if you have any produce or from your garden or trees, or if you want to donate any non-perishable canned goods or whatnot, we'll have an event for a 3-hour event from 11 to 2 at the what's it called? The Conservatory Green Park and Plaza area. We're going to do a walkthrough probably next week with the MCA folks there, and hopefully with a different Brad from the city to kind of work out some of the logistical details. But we've got CPBA helping us, the MCA helping, and then our group as well. So I think we'll be, in good shape, and we'll see what kind of turnout we get.
A flyer for that, Mark?
Yeah, it went out in our last email.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't. So, okay.
I know most of the board members don't look at the emails when they go out because they assume they've already heard the stuff, but we probably all should actually look at the emails.
That's true. I will do that. And then I also added a bullet point on the community survey, since that's what, I know you sent out an email about that, but I want to just kind of, if you can just give a quick update on the community survey and what you need from us on the board.
So the main thing we're going to need is either an acceptance that it's going to be very long, or everybody's going to have to offer up some questions they don't mind losing, because it's quite a long survey, and we kind of go through this process a little bit every year. I'm happy to take whatever suggestions people have, or recommendations or requests for edits, and try to make those next week. But short of anybody offering up a question to cut, I'm kind of gonna keep the door closed to any new questions being added, and ask that if anybody has any questions they're willing to part ways with. I did discover in doing the edits that apparently the email that I had received from Brian Weber saying that this is the survey that we had from last year was not actually the survey we fielded last year. It was the early extra long version of it. So there was a lot of trimming we did last year that didn't get reflected went around. So I will make sure from an institutional knowledge standpoint to make sure that this year, whatever gets fielded, we have a PDF version that goes around and gets saved. But anyways, I think I'm happy to go through the survey and recommend things that we cut, but usually when I've done that in the past, very little of it gets accepted because everyone feels like their stuff is super important. So if anybody wants to volunteer questions to cut out of it, feel free to email me with those question numbers. But right now it's, probably somewhere in the range of 15 to 20 minutes instead of the 10 to 15 or 10 to 12 we usually try to keep it to.
What's the deadline to get you the cuts?
As I put in my email before, cuts I will accept up until the last minute. The only problem is if anybody suggests cutting somebody else's question, then there's a little bit of back and forth. So any requested changes I would suggest by the end of this week so that I have time to kind of go through everything next week. And if there's any back and forth and anything, we have time for that. Because again, we're trying to, get it started on the 1st of October, which is like 2 weeks a week from this coming Sunday.
Yeah. So not very long.
Not a ton of time, no.
Yeah.
But the exact start date is always a little bit of somewhat fungible if we need to fine tune things a little bit. But it's just mostly a question of how long are we comfortable with it being, and how comfortable are any of the committees or groups or anybody else in dropping questions. I mean, we have a lot of demographic questions up front, so that might be a place where we alternate which years we ask them. And maybe we don't ask all of them this year. That's one option. But like I said, I can go through and recommend some cuts. And once I see what everyone recommends by the end of this week, I'll go through and say, hey, if we want to get this any shorter, here's what I suggest. But it's always kind of a balancing act of how comfortable are we how comfortable are we with it being longer, and how do we feel about any specific question in that frame, that frame of mind.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to this is Mandel and Jamie. I believe Mandel, you're on. I know Jamie has a bedtime at the moment, so I'm not sure if she's able to unmute. But Mandel, are you if Jamie's not able to, Mandel, are you able to unmute and just give a quick run through when the action item is a vote?
Yes, I'm unmuted. I didn't hear all of what you said though. What are you requesting from me?
Oh, it's just we're on the slide for the kind of like basic kind of briefing, like just a little overview of the Indigenous cultural celebration. And then I kind of have the rundown of what the costs are and the funds that you you really put a lot of work into to raise the funds to cover it. So just a quick description and then the action.
I got you. So I can't read the slide there, but I'll go from what I've been working on with Jamie and some others. This celebration is going to be hosted by Red Elk, who is an Indigenous woman who she puts on these dances, and we've got some dancers that are coming in as well as some vendors, and the MCA is allowing us to use their space. We also have food that will be distributed freely for our guests. And so we've got a number of people who have donated, including the MCA, the Foundation for Urban Sustainable, is it Sustainable Urban Communities? And then the Central Park Business Association. And lastly, there was one more that I think I'm missing. I don't want to leave anybody out.
Brookfield.
Oh, Brookfield. Yeah. And so again, as you stated, it's on November 4th, and we're looking forward to everybody in the community coming out and participating in this.
And so basically we're currently receiving the donated funds, and Brian, in order to basically disperse all of those funds for it, he needs us to vote to just approve the kind of cutting the check for it. So
motion to approve.
Seconded.
All right.
And then all right, good. All right. That is done. The funding and check cutting is approved. The second item on this, Mark and Mandel, if you want to go through it, it's a little more complicated than the Indigenous event. So who would like to take the lead on this?
Yeah, I can talk through it since I'm the one who put together the details on the slide. So I put together essentially three options that are presented to us. One is essentially the current approach, which is Nation Builder, and the next two are proposals that we received from what do you call it? Web designer companies in the area that live in our neighborhood, both from people from our neighborhood. First one, Nation Builder. The one in the middle is the one that we discussed in the Outreach Communications Committee, and Mandel and I recommend, which is a WordPress-based site where we use MailChimp for our email system. The MailChimp part's a little bit more flexible. We can move out or in because another option, Constant Contact, that's also available, is a similar price and similar features. But I think the MailChimp one actually gives us more accounts for the same amount of money. Nation Builder, for those who don't know, is the current system we use for email for our website, and has an integrated what's known as a CRM, or customer relationship management software, I believe is what that stands for. And it allows us to keep track of some data and information from those who are in our database of emails to send to, right? But it's designed for shall we say campaigns and nonprofits that are regularly talking to voters. So it has some features that we're not really using that brings the cost much higher of a. I think this last year was about $6,000, and they also raised the rates last year, so I can't guarantee that they won't do so again, which is why it has 6,000 to 7,000 annually. But we're already set up with it. The recommended approach would be to redesign the website with something built in WordPress. WordPress, for those who don't know, is what a lot of, I think, a huge percentage of the websites that nonprofits and groups out there also use. And then we would add on to that or integrate it in with MailChimp. It has some different plugins we could use. The upfront cost of getting set up, we were estimated at being between $3,000 and $5,000. And then the combined WordPress hosting costs with MailChimp, I estimated it would be about $2,100 annually. So about a third the cost of what Nation Builder has been. The reason we recommend that over the Squarespace plus MailChimp combo, which is a little bit less than that, is that the WordPress has more flexibility built into it in terms of the capabilities of the various WordPress plugins that you can get. There's a lot of people who have created different plugins for WordPress. And it's the website details are a little more customizable. Squarespace is more of a sort of template-based thing where you kind of build it simply. Both of these quotes include largely the cost of transferring over the content that's there and possibly some updates. That's why there's kind of a range on the WordPress part is depends on how much updates we're doing and how complex we want to get, but I'm hoping we can keep it to the lower end of that. So what we're hoping to do is get like I said, Mandel and I recommend the WordPress version with MailChimp added on. We'd like to get this all set up by the end of the year so that we don't end up having to pay any additional Nation Builder costs. And I think we should have enough funds in the budget for this. But given that there's a lot of setup and transfer over that needs to happen by the end of the year, we'd like to move on it as soon as possible and would ask for a vote on that middle proposal tonight. But I'm happy to answer questions about the other options.
Mark can hear me. Mark, can you hear me when I talk?
I can now.
Does the 3,000 to 5,000 include, is that standalone for the first year and then subsequent years would be 2,100, or would the first year be like 7,000?
So the 2,100 is for the hosting fees and the monthly fees for WordPress, or sorry, for MailChimp. So it'd be a combination of those two. So the 3,000 to 5,000 is the initial setup. So it would be somewhere, the total cost for the first year would be somewhere between, 5,100 to 7,100. So about the same cost, or possibly, or likely less than Nation Builder. But then in subsequent years, it would only be the 2,100.
Do we have 7,100 for next year if we choose that?
We currently have over 11,000 free and clear from the fundraising and funds we've received already. So yeah, we're in good shape there. And the 2,100 is what I would say about what the fundraising committee has been able to, is actually slightly less than the fundraising committee was able to raise in this last year. We did probably closer to, I want to say 2,500 in the last year. And then I believe there's the MCA has been generous in giving us money beyond that as well. So that's why I feel comfortable with that one is the Nation Builder cost we can't sustain. We just don't have the fundraising capacity as far as I can foresee. The other two options, I feel like we can sustain the fundraising that we need to do to afford them. And they're not substantially different in cost. And yes, we do have the funds in the bank now to cover the entire 7,100 we need to. And we'd be able to, fundraise for making up more of it beyond that too.
Sorry for monopolizing this. So can you remind us exactly like where that 2,400 came? Like it was pieced together from the golf tournament and a dine and donate and
yeah. So there was I'd say probably 200 to 250 from the Chipotle nights, 1,300 and something from the mini golf tournaments, and about 1,000 plus, I think, from the email sponsorships. And yeah, that's where it's come from in the past year.
In terms of like the ongoing effort, does the fundraising committee feel like it's well positioned to like keep that effort going?
I think we can replicate most of that. We'll see if the email sponsorships continue at the level that they have, because we've heard that some of our main sponsors are happy to continue, renewing, but B, that it hasn't been a tremendous return on investment for them. That they got an initial round, but I also feel like we can probably do even better this coming year on the fundraising on the mini golf tournament. This was our first year doing it, and we've already talked about ways we could boost that amount. And then I also have thoughts on how we can do more of the dining out thing, because apparently Qdoba is up to their game when it comes to being able to do dining out options. So, and I know you all don't eat burritos as much as I do, but it makes up the difference. And then on top of it, like I said, I think the MCA has committed to give us, at least $3,000 each year. So that more than covers that amount. But we would obviously hope to use those funds for events and committee efforts and whatnot. But yeah, I think the fundraising committee in its current formation feels comfortable with either of those two options with the 2,100 annually.
So specifically, if the prices were the same between WordPress and Squarespace, are there any features that we are utilizing that we would lose by going with Squarespace over WordPress?
There's, Mandel, you might be able to touch on that a little better than I can. I don't know if there's features that we're currently using that we would lose with one versus the other.
Repeat the question?
Yeah, go ahead. Repeat the question so I don't get it wrong.
The price were the same. Are there any features that are available with WordPress that we currently use that we would lose if we were to go with Squarespace? Like expanding on the more limited capabilities.
I don't necessarily know that we would lose any features that we currently have. There were some things that we wanted to do with Nation Builder that we were not able to do. And then there's also the customization factor that we have with WordPress. One of the downsides with Squarespace is it's all template based, and you cannot customize it. And then also the WordPress is open source, and so people are creating various plugins that will allow you to integrate all sorts of functionality within the website. So we don't want to, I think we don't want to get locked into something, spending money, and then find out that we can't pivot if we need to do something different. So I think that, WordPress, and in my opinion, because of those things, is the way to go.
Could you give us a couple examples of what can't we do with Nation Builder that you would like to be able to do with the new website?
I don't think it's necessarily a question of things we can't do with Nation Builder. It's just more that for the things the services that we're using, it's a more expensive option for what we're doing. I think between WordPress and Squarespace, there may be some plugins that we end up having to do with things like how do we do event management. We might discover that there's a great plugin for event management where it automatically. My hope is we find one that it automatically sends out reminders for people who have RSVP'd, for example. I'm not sure what the options are out there yet, and I agree with Mandel that if we go the Squarespace route instead of WordPress, then we're really locked in where we'd have to do the whole setup cost again to switch back just to save a few $100 a year, which I think we can afford either way. The Nation Builder part, we just can't. We're not fundraising enough to be able to sustain that cost of $6,000 to $7,000. And again, there aren't really features we're using that would justify paying that much.
Is it a full redesign?
Well, it would be a new setup and new graphical, everything. Yeah, because we're using a Nation Builder template. Now, the structure of everything, and then whether or not it's a complete change in our structure and redesign depends on how much we want to spend. If we want to keep the cost closer to the $3,000 amount, then we should probably just go with something that's relatively similar in structure. But if each of the committees, for example, wants to completely refresh their page with new content, that may incur additional hours of time for the designer to spend, interfacing with everybody. And time is money for people who work for themselves.
Option make it more likely for us to be able to edit our own pages.
I don't think any of the three will be any different in that. I mean, they all have similar levels of functionality when it comes to being able to edit our own pages.
And I guess within that annual cost, what is the domain fee?
It's a minuscule part of that. I think it's included in. I'm pretty sure it's included in the hosting for both Squarespace and WordPress. I mean, the domain fee is usually like owning the domain's like 10 or 20 bucks a year. So not much.
Yeah, it's minimal. I was just curious.
Are there any other questions, or so my understanding is that the reason there's a range on the WordPress plus MailChimp is because it's dependent on kind of the number of hours that would go into the work on WordPress, like the design for that. Yeah. So, and there was a potential range for the Squarespace part as well, but I left that range out of there because the additional cost was estimated based on setting up a store that would require us to keep stock of inventory and price individual items. And I didn't think we were going to do that because the only store we have right now is through Bonfire, and Bonfire's store is, print on demand. So we don't have to manage inventory there. So I didn't think there was any interest in doing that. And that's a fourth category of potential fundraising that we haven't put out any fresh content on our in terms of shirts or merchandise in a while. So, but we could.
And one more thing I just wanted to add. I know there was a question earlier about what we weren't able to do with Nation Builder that we would be able to do with WordPress. And so initially when we were going through and I was helping with some of the design, there were just some restrictions on color palettes and, formatting of pages that I ran into. So that was particularly one thing that stood out to mind.
Okay. And so I guess, do you want to put the motion forward, or are there other questions or concerns anybody has?
I guess the question for me would be, is there anybody that is like leaning towards Squarespace versus WordPress? And if so, why?
There's no, I was gonna say nobody.
I manage a Squarespace page,
Oh,
but it's very easy to use, but I'm not familiar enough with WordPress to say that it's a preference over. So I think whoever's gone through the demos and had those conversations should make the recommendation.
okay.
I think WordPress is more mainstream by far.
Yeah.
More futuristic.
Yeah.
It's pretty much 70%, I would say, probably of most websites.
Yeah. Okay. So a motion, I guess. So the motion is to approve the quote for the WordPress plus MailChimp option.
Yep.
Got that right? Okay.
Yep.
Second?
Yep.
All right. We got a second. I guess we can vote. I mean, since Mandela and Mark are proposing it, I guess we can just vote in the room. I'm
in
favor.
this time. Yeah. Okay. All right. I think it passes. And I guess we'll follow up when Brian returns. We'll follow up with him, I guess, on the timing of that. Something I don't know if everybody saw the email, but Brian's father passed away this weekend. So he's there taking care of it. I'll send out an email. I was going to get a card so that folks could sign it. I did not get to do that today. So I'll just send out an email with my address and I'll leave the card out on my front porch and folks can sign it as they want and I'll get it to.
I might not get to your house. Feel free to sign my name, please.
Okay, that's fine. Or I can cut, you know, if it's one person, I can probably come to you.
Okay.
So we'll coordinate. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure as a board that we offered our condolences collectively to Brian. And yeah, and then we'll follow up. One last thing, our next meeting is Tuesday, October 17th. It's going to be, our guest speaker is actually going to be the representative from Brookfield to talk about some upcoming developments that are particularly around the 40th and Central Park Boulevard and the transit-oriented development coming in by RTD. So we'll be pushing that out. Hope to see folks here in person and on Zoom. And with that, we can close.
Thank you all.
Thanks for coming.
Feedback about how the candidate form, please send it to us.
Thanks.